mic was already hot. Call to order for the Watertown City Council meeting for June 6, 2022. We will rise and hear a prayer from Jody Ingalls, the pastoral care representative from Prairie Lakes Hospital.
Dear God, thank you for the men and women willing to serve the city of Watertown in a governing capacity to do what is good for the whole of this community. May they seek appropriate solutions to controversial issues, set standards of ethical and moral behavior, and reach for growth and prosperity for the community of Watertown and the surrounding area. May your wisdom and guidance, dear Lord, be present in all decisions made tonight and in the future. Amen.
The republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jody. Finance Officer Bob Zine, would you please call the roll?
Okay. Bueller?
Here.
Danforth?
Here.
Pauline?
Here.
Paulson?
Here.
Shetty?
Here.
Tupper?
Here.
Billhauer?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Quorum established. Chair will entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Shetty. Any conversation on that? Hearing none. Motion is to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Now we are open for public comments. If anyone is here to speak about an item that is not on tonight's agenda, now is your time to do so. Nobody's coming forward, so we'll close public comments. Move over to the approval of tonight's agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Made by Councilman Billhauer, seconded by Councilman Paulson. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item A on tonight's agenda is an application for a transfer of ownership of a malt beverage and wine license from Mint Casino to Hillman Roadside Gas, doing business as Mint Casino at the same location. For more information, we'll go to our finance officer, Kristen Bobzine.
Thank you, Mayor. Before the council tonight is the transfer of ownership for Mint Casino. Everything was noticed in the paper and all fees have been paid and everything's in order. If there's any questions, I can try to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll open a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to comment on this item? Nobody is coming forward. I will close the public hearing and open it up for council action. Is there a motion to approve the transfer of ownership? Made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Any comments on this? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the transfer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item B is an application for a special retail malt beverage and wine license to the Lake Area Zoological Society for Sippin' Safari. We'll go to our finance officer, Kristen Bobzine, for more information.
Thank you, Mayor. Same on this one, special event license for the Sippin' Safari. Everything was published in the paper. Notice was given. Fees have been paid. Otherwise, if there's any questions, I can try to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chair will open up public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item? Councilman Billhauer?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to invite, if you want to put a plug in for...
She was looking away, you know. But I think, come on forward. Just introduce yourself for everyone.
How about that? I am Jamie Stricker, and I am the zoo educator at the Bramble Park Zoo, and I am the one that helps the Zoo Society to put on this event. And we've had the event for a few years. It's something we sort of do annually. It's an adults-only evening at the zoo, and so that is Friday, June 24th from 6 to 9 p.m. And we will start selling tickets with your approval tomorrow. And so those are $40. You can either talk to a Lake Area Zoological Society board member or come to the zoo to get a ticket. And new this year, so we're having the same entertainment and drinks and things, but we will have 2 food trucks this year that will be at the event. And so we have Buenissimo, it's Peruvian food. And then we have another one that's just sort of lots of fried little tater tot dishes and hot sausages and things like that. So that'll be in addition to the event this year. And we are increasing our ticket sales. We used to only sell 200 tickets. This year we are selling 300. So come on out to Sippin' Safari.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to testify on this? Chair will close the public hearing and open it up for council action. Is there a motion to approve the license? Made by Councilman Vilhauer, seconded by Councilman Paulson. Any comments or questions on this, council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the application. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item C is an approval of a one-year lease agreement with Pioneer Aviation, LLC, for city-owned real property located at the Watertown Regional Airport. City Attorney Matt Roby, would you please illuminate us on this?
Thank you, Mayor. As you stated in the title, it's actually Pioneer Aviation 2, LLC is the name of the
I thought that was a misspelling.
No, that is the actual name of the entity. So they've approached the city. It's actually been an ongoing conversation for the last year or two. Local operator seeking to run his aerial applicator business out of the Watertown Airport. We currently do not have a physical location for him to build a structure. And so what this is a temporary setup for this operation until we, assuming all the boxes are checked and we go forward with the Ag taxiway next year, they'll be able to then build their permanent structure on the Ag taxiway. So this would be a temporary setup. It's located adjacent to the stone hangar. You'll see on the attachment here, the exhibit kind of shows the 125 by 125 area where they'll be setting up their 1 year temporary operation.
Thank you very much. I will open a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item? I'll close the public hearing and open it up for council action. Is there a motion to approve the agreement? Made by Councilman Schutte, seconded by Councilman Danforth. Any questions or comments on this, council? Councilman Vilhauer.
This does come with recommendation by the airport board at today's airport board meeting for approval. And I just a question for the attorney. I mean, the FAA has approved or blessed this arrangement, because I know that was somewhat of a concern as a discussion was going on.
Yes, Councilman. So a bit further on backstory here, as you'll recall, last year the council approved an additional ordinance that allows for temporary deviation from our business standards for aeronautical services at the airport for no greater than 1 year, and that was as a result of conversations with the FAA, and so now that the potential for them to become fully compliant with our rules, basically building that permanent structure is now within that kind of 1 year time period roughly. The FAA has blessed this temporary lease, and in addition, we actually checked this off with SHPO as well, the State Historical Preservation Office, because of its proximity to the stone hangar, and there was no issues there either. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments, council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the agreement. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item D is Cottington County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan discussion, which we will hear about from our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll just quick tee this up and then hand it over to Peyton. Peyton Carta is a representative from First District. She works as a planner with them. She's here on behalf of Cottington County, as First District is working with Cottington County to update the county's pre-disaster mitigation plan. Part of that process includes talking to all the municipalities within the county and each municipality's role and assets and things of that nature is related to emergency management functions. So with that, I'll pass it right over to Peyton, and she can present the report as necessary to the City Council.
Okay, is this on? All right. Yeah, Heath covered it pretty well. Basically, this plan, the pre-disaster mitigation plan, has to be updated every 5 years through FEMA in order for the county and then the cities to be to be eligible for any funding that happens when a disaster declaration is declared, or now they're actually going to have some yearly funds that are also available through some other grant types. So this helps the city be eligible. And then I guess before we kind of get started, do you guys do like a sign-in or anything with the public? If not, I might just pass this around and have everyone sign in if that's okay, because it just shows that we have public participation, basically. Okay, bring this up. And you don't have to worry about putting your emails in there. Okay, so while that's getting passed around, then basically, we met with the city, it was about 2 months ago, I think now, with the city staff members and went through this in more detail since they really know a lot of the projects, the infrastructure in town for cities, streets, flooding. Those are a lot of our biggest projects, project areas that we focus on. So we'll just kind of go through that document, which I believe is in your packets there. So as I said at the start, we really look at natural hazards that affect the county and then the cities. So when we were working with the city staff, the highest hazards that they identified were extreme heat and cold, flood, freezing, hail, heavy rain and snow, ice jam, lightning, strong winds, and then thunderstorms. There was some discussion about tornadoes. Is that, a high hazard vulnerability or not? It kind of went back and forth, and it kind of settled on it's more of a medium. We happen to see it every once in a while, but it doesn't happen every year. So these were kind of the things that they felt we see every single year, and then some lower probability was like drought, maybe some rapid snow melt causing some flooding, and then wildfire, urban fire. So then on the flip side of that, then they went through and identified if that hazard were to hit the city, how much of the city would it damage? Would it affect more than 10, 20% of the city? And they did identify that, extreme heat and cold, snow, flooding are going to be the big ones that we see or have to deal with. So those are the ones where most of our projects are going to be related to. Then we went through and discussed all of the critical infrastructure for the city of Watertown. So this would be anything city-owned, such as government buildings, this building, fire departments, police department, as well as privately owned, such as our communication towers and some of the cable and internet services. So really, we just want to identify those places. So if they would ever get hit in a storm, we know where we want to be putting our focus on. So they also identified some booster stations, water towers, lagoons. Like I said, pretty much all government entities, the bridges in town, evacuation routes on the streets, and then all of the schools, public parks, assisted living, and then hospitals were all of the items. So the new ones that we added into town were a couple different wells, the generation plant, the substation for WAPA, and then a couple natural gas pipelines as well. So just identifying where those were at in the city. And then lastly, the last thing we discuss is basically if money was raining from the sky, if FEMA gave you everything you ever wanted, what were the projects that they would want to get accomplished first in the city? And the majority of them did relate to flooding and stormwater, mostly with the streets or with some bridge replacements. But there were a couple projects for tornado shelters for some of the parks in town, as well as around the mobile home parks, just because they tend to be more of a vulnerable population if you were out and a tornado hit, or maybe just a really bad thunderstorm even. As well as, let's see, we also talked about some generators for utilities, lift stations in the city, and then an additional siren and the new fire station going up over on the east side. Let's see, and then lastly, we went through all these projects, and there were anything that was done, completed in the last 5 years, or maybe if it was there was a couple that were still included, but they were completed, so we were able to cross those off, mark them as done, so it shows FEMA that we've been making progress, which always looks great. And then there were 3 that were just no longer concerned, so those were removed. And that's really all I have on my side. When you guys looked through all the packet or anything, was there anything that stuck out or anything that you guys would want to see included as projects or anything like that? And the public is welcome to comment if they would like as well.
All right, thank you very much. Questions and comments from the council. Councilman Tupper.
I got one question, Peyton.
Yeah.
Next time it rains, all these checks are gonna be coming out of the sky then?
Yeah. Well, we can only hope, but, well, you know, just down in Hamlin, right, with the tornado and all that stuff, they'll probably be getting some funding, I would think maybe next year. But I know one of the counties we've had the most success in the last couple of years was Moody County. They got a tornado shelter put in Flandreau, and they were burying a lot of power lines around Coleman. So they actually had, I think it was 4 or 5 different projects that they were able to get funded through this plan. So it's basically, yeah, just being able to identify everything. You're not always going to get what you want, but it at least gives you the possibility to ask.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, please.
So is there some funding for additional storm shelters possible?
I don't know if there's anything specifically for storm shelters out there right now. You'd have to talk with either like Greg Mogg or Christina Kraus in our office. There are grants people, and they'd be able to tell you a little bit more closely. But I think the window for this year has probably closed, and then it'll be the new grant coming out, or the yearly grant coming out. There will be so much issued to each county every year to apply for, but I'm not sure what the amount is going to be for that yet.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Villauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure quite who to address the question, but I'll look over in that direction. I'm assuming that as we do our CIP and our, year-to-year budget, I mean, some consideration is given to what's on this, plan, because I mean, there's pretty big dollars on here that obviously not everything's going to happen all at once, but I'm assuming some consideration is given to what's on here.
Free for all, if for anyone who wants to take that.
Yeah, that's correct, Councilman Vilhauer. We would definitely keep these projects in mind that help mitigate some of the flooding and other emergency hazard type of mitigation efforts in place, and incorporate them into the CIP along with all the other listed projects as we see fit and as funds are available.
Follow up?
Yes, please.
Comment. Peyton and I are both in the thriving metropolis of Trip, South Dakota, just so you know. That's about right.
Oh, yeah.
Now the population's only 4?
That's why we got to point it out. It's so unique.
Any further comments or questions, Council? Thank you very much, Peyton.
All right. Thanks for letting me take some time up, guys.
Item E is a first reading of an ordinance establishing A1 Agricultural District, which upon annexation shall be known as Harmony Hill First Annexation Edition. Public Works Director Heath Von Eye, please let us know more.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an application brought forth by the Benedictine Sisters of Watertown, the Mother of God Monastery, in correlation with the work and the improvements that they're doing on their property there on the south end of town. This portion of their property contains 35 acres, and it's a subsequent annexation and zoning that is on the heels of a recent one that we've just seen for that area, and is to incorporate additional infrastructure installations in order to do so, i.e. build out some streets, water main, sewer main, things of that nature, to accommodate future development. This is the first step in that process to include another portion of their land. I do have a map here I can pull up, and I'll share to teams just as a point of reference exactly which portion we're referring to. So as you recall, we've worked in this northeasterly area, east central part of their property with annexation and zoning. They began to build some of this infrastructure out. Now this area outlined in white is the portion that's in question before you tonight in first reading format, and will be brought forward at the next meeting and for the second reading. I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you very much, and we will open it up for questions from the council. Hearing no questions, so we will see this back for a second reading. Item F is an approval of resolution adopting the boundaries and approving the project plan for TIF number 20, generally located at US Highway 212 and west of Roby Creek. Heath Von Eye, our Public Works Director, please let us know more.
Thank you again, Mayor. This is TIF number 20. It's related to the, sorry as I fumble through to my map here, related to the, yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I think that was the arm wrestle over here. I think I was going to take this one.
Sorry about that. Thank
That's
you.
okay. TIF 20 is actually the it's the area near Montgomery's that's under development. It is it's expected to, let's see here, give you a little synopsis.
There, I have the map pulled up for reference.
Okay. It's expected to result in $9 million of investment over a 3-year time frame. It will also prepare for the extension of 11th Street Southeast, provide improvements to the drainage ditch area, and the construction of 4 commercial buildings, 1 bank, 2 strip malls, and a building annex. Of course, this TIF is the purpose is to support the economic development initiative of this project. It's expected to have total eligible costs, TIF eligible costs of $2.5 million approximately, and the estimated TIF revenue is just slightly higher than that, $2.53 million. And I guess I'll just leave it at that and open it up for questions.
Thank you very much. I know I don't have to open up a public hearing, but I know that there's some people out in the audience who might be interested in speaking on this. You're welcome to do so now if you want to, but you don't have to. Okay, I see no one coming forward, so Chair will entertain a motion from the council so we can start talking about it to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Made by Councilman Tupper. Need a second? Second. Seconded by Councilman Vilhauer. Now open it up for questions and comments. Council? Councilman Vilhauer.
I ask this question, I ask this question every time a TIF comes forward, and there was some discussion at the Planning Commission meeting recently on a different TIF that I want to make sure I understand or clarify, because I think there was some confusion. As I understand it, this is an economic development TIF. Okay, what that means is there's certain types of TIFs, this economic development being one, affordable housing being another, for example, where our school districts are made whole under the state aid formula. I'm seeing some nodding from you, Matt. I want to make sure that is a fair statement, because there was a comment made at the Planning Commission that led me to believe that the thought was that economic development TIFs don't make the school districts whole.
It's my understanding that as long as, and I see the economic development directors in the back here, but as long as it's classified under one of the categories under state law, economic development, affordable housing, I'm drawing a blank on the other, I think there's 4 total. As long as it's not a local development TIF, as long as it falls under one of those state identified categories, the school district is made whole. Okay. And this is one of the identified categories.
Okay. I just wanted to get that out there, because there seemed to be some confusion on that at the Planning Commission discussion on a different TIF that we're going to be acting on here later on this evening. And this is a pay-as-you-go. In other words, there's no dollars up front being fronted for this TIF.
That's correct. This is being financed by the developers.
And another question, Mayor. And we're still well below the threshold that we're allowed for TIFs. I see, based upon the information, that we're, only about 7 or 8% of what we can have for TIFs is what we've approved. So we're well below the threshold that we can do this.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments, Council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item G is TIF number 17, approval of the resolution adopting the boundaries and approving the project plan for it as amended, located along Derby Golf Course Road in Derby Downs Development for affordable housing. And number 2, authorization for the city manager to sign the development agreement between the City of Watertown and High Five LLC for TIF number 17. We'll go to our city attorney, Matt Roby, for more information.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is actually the first time since I've been here, and probably the first time in our history that we've actually had to go back and amend a TIF. And so the purpose for this amendment is the increase of eligible TIF costs. As you should be pretty clear by now if you watch the news that the cost of everything has gone up lately. So when this was approved last year on September 7th, 2021, the eligible project costs were identified as 2.5 million. The eligible project costs are now identified as 5.4 million. The additional change to the project since the original approval is the number of homes has reduced from 72 to 69. And because this is a change of more than 35% of the eligible project costs, the base needs to be recertified by the state. Now, presumably, it won't change much because nothing has changed on the property yet. So the base will maybe tick up slightly, but that is the other piece that will have to occur. And the development agreement that's attached simply reflects those numbers that I just referenced.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion. I'm going to take these two as one motion, if that's all right. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution and to authorize the signing of the agreement. Made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Danforth. Now I will open it up for questions and comments from the council. Councilman Danforth.
Mayor, if I may, I think it's probably a Matt question. Matt, I know that I had sent an email and you responded back. The affordable housing number that's used in our documents today is $330,000, and apparently that's a number that's acceptable for something to be classified as affordable housing. Is there a maximum that a home could be built for there? For example, this is being brought to us under the guise of being affordable housing. What if I bought a lot or two and I wanted to build a $500,000 house or a $750,000 house in an area that is using a TIF for affordable housing? You see my question? It qualifies with some number, but is there a maximum that goes into this when it is using a TIF for affordable housing?
So it's my understanding that number can change on a year-to-year basis. You know, I think the legislature, the Department of Revenue, I would imagine, tweaks that with maybe a cost of living adjustment. But the test is it has to be no more than that number at the time of sale. And so to answer your question, that would not be allowable. And if it were to occur, it would jeopardize the classification of the TIF. If the home were to sell for more than that threshold number, it would jeopardize the classification of the TIF, and jeopardize the TIF in and of itself, I presume.
Okay, and is that something that we monitor? I mean, do we have close eyes on that as things are?
Well, the documents, the standard development agreement does identify the requirement of the developer following up with us on an annual basis. But this would be the first, so where this one is a little different than the other TIFs we've been a part of is it's multiple structures, right? Most of the developments that have been subject to TIFs have been kind of one structure that goes up kind of at one time. We're here, to answer your question, have we had a monitoring system? We haven't really needed to necessarily, but in this case, we may need to think about how that's going to look. And at the end of the day, it's really because the developer has financing tied up into this. They're running if they exceed those dollar amounts, they run the risk of a TIF going away, which of course jeopardizes their financing. So they have a strong incentive to make sure the homes don't sell at that original price for higher than the allowable amount. But Should we have a follow-up system? Yes, I mean, that can be discussed.
Yeah, I know the developer, and I certainly have every confidence that they're going to work within that. But we have to make sure that we are taking care of our end of that and making no assumptions. So we do need to have a systematic approach of watching that to make sure that things are staying within what the definitions for the TIF would be then.
Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess this stems from the discussion around affordable housing. I don't like that term. I think that it's overused, and frankly, it doesn't tell the realistic situation. In this case, a $330,000 house is only affordable to who can afford it. So that's why I don't like the name affordable housing. But kind of to go off of Mike's comments there are, how do they guarantee that those houses stay within the range with the fluid market that we have right now? And I guess that goes back to reporting, but how is that guaranteed that stays within that range when our market is crazy right now?
I don't, Mayor, if I might.
Yes, please.
I don't think there's a guarantee, but again, they would have a strong incentive to, if that got out of whack somehow, I don't know what would happen, to be honest. So if the market went real crazy and the state didn't catch that and didn't update the number soon enough, then there's probably bigger problems. But can you guarantee that? No, but they have a strong incentive to make sure that TIF doesn't get jeopardized, because if it does, their financing will be jeopardized. So should we have a follow-up? And again, the document spells out this follow-up procedure, and so should we make sure we do what the document says we're going to do? Yes. But they also have a strong market incentive to make sure that those homes are not selling for more than that number. And again, if the market gets out ahead of what the number is, then Michelle needs to go lobby the state and make sure the number gets to be higher.
Any follow-up, Councilman? Councilman Tupper.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think at the very beginning of this development or any place during the development so far it's ever been considered affordable housing. It has been designated more as workforce housing, which qualifies for some other programs. So I think we need to correct ourselves when we're using the word affordable housing. It's workforce housing. So,
City Attorney Roby.
Councilman, I don't disagree, but the terminology in statute is affordable housing, and that's what the classification is. So yes, I don't disagree. I think the new nomenclature is workforce housing, but the statute still says affordable housing. So.
Councilman Villauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just reference my comments a few minutes ago about the state aid formula, as well as well within the limits of allowable TIFs in Watertown. So I just want to, it applies to this as well.
All right. Any further questions or comments, Council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the resolution and authorize the signing of the agreement. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item H is an approval of a resolution of acceptance for development improvements related to the 10th Avenue North Reconstruction Project installed by Timmons Construction on behalf of Prairie Lakes Healthcare System. Heath Von Eye, our Public Works Director, please tell us more.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a formality, really, more than anything, to help clear up some ownership of wastewater sanitary sewer mains. And during the construction of the 10th Avenue project last year, actually subsequent to that, or prior to that, they, through the design phase, we realized there was a portion of sanitary sewer, including a manhole, and a stretch of sewer main that ran underneath 10th Avenue and 4th Street. Here on this map that I've got pulled up on Teams, you can see 10th Avenue running east-west across here. Here's the corner of the hospital property and one of their buildings here that I believe this sewer services. So some years back, when this building was constructed, they put these improvements in on behalf of the hospital, but nothing was ever formally done for the city to check these off and formally accept them as public infrastructure. So we did have to perform some improvements to this sewer main through the 10th Avenue project so that it met our engineering design standards. There was some pipe that needed some corrections so that the slope and grade was appropriate like it needed to be. I believe the manhole needed some improvements as well. But that work has been performed, and the hospital has reimbursed the city for that work. Justin's nodding his head in agreement there. And so now the formality is just to bring this forward to formally accept it as public infrastructure now that it meets our engineering design standards. The whole goal here was we typically don't like to see or feel the need to have private infrastructure of this caliber and magnitude running through our streets. And so if it's built to the engineering design standards, we're more than happy to take it over as part of our public infrastructure. And that's exactly what we're doing here.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Any questions or comments, Council? Councilman Tupper?
City Engineer Von Eye, or Public Works, excuse me. How did that get done without any approval to begin with? I guess that's my question is weren't there some checks and balances when they originally did it, or?
Yeah, no, that's, I don't doubt that there was some level of approval through the building permit process some years back. I don't think what we weren't doing back then is the formal public infrastructure acceptance process that we have initiated here a couple years back and have trying to get into the more systematic routine of doing when it comes to any development, whether it's for one commercial site such as this or an entire residential subdivision, for example. We're following ordinances, which are common for other cities to have in place, by the way, and that closeout process for improvements like this to be formally inspected and reviewed by the city to then take them over for public infrastructure when it makes sense. I mean, there are certain situations where the infrastructure remains private, but this was certainly one where we thought this should probably be public, and then the hospital doesn't have to deal with maintaining a portion of sewer main under our streets for years to come. So,
Mayor, may I?
Yes.
So, I guess what I seen years ago, I mean, this is one thing that was always kind of a pet peeve of mine, was the City of Watertown didn't do a very good job of checking what everybody said they were going to do. And we've pretty much taken care of that, I take it. So those checks and balances are taken care of with developers. So what the developer says he's going to do, that's what he actually does. And or developer, construction, whichever. I'm not picking on developers, but so those checks and balances are a lot better what they used to be in the past.
yes, Councilman, I want to say, I guess, I don't want to, talk ill about past performances from past employees, but I can tell you that the processes are currently structured now today in a way that makes sense to us, to the engineering team, the development team, and in a way that gets this public infrastructure off the developers, the contractors' books, and onto our books in a formal acceptance process.
I'm not saying the past employees did a bad job. I just don't think
Absolutely.
the city had a good enough process
Sure.
in place back then to where we
Correct.
did the checks and balances.
I would
So
agree, correct.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item I is an authorization for the city manager to sign a 2-year contract with Hamlin County for non-emergency police dispatching. We'll go to, well, just please announce yourself to the council and everyone watching.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor and members of the council. Troy Van Duzen, representing the Watertown 911 Center. Glad to be in front of you this evening with this proposal seeking authorization for the city manager to sign this 2-year contract with Hamlin County in the amount of $24,685.20. As you're aware, currently we do provide non-emergency dispatching services for 6 counties. Basically, this contract would allow us to continue doing that, except to charge a fee to those counties to recover some of the costs that we're currently paying out to provide that service. So it's basically, if you remember back late last year, I came in front of the council seeking authorization to do the same thing with Grant County. This is what we're doing with Hamlin County, and we're working on Clark County as well at this time. So I'm just seeking authorization to establish this. This would be a 2-year contract with quarterly payments to be collected. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion. Is there anyone else who needs to testify on this? All right. Chair will entertain a motion to authorize the contract made by Councilman Schutte, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Open it up for questions and comments. Councilman Villauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Troy, I just want to make sure, $24,685.20, that's per year.
Per year.
Okay.
That's correct, and it is a 2-year contract. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Tupper.
Where else do you do it right now, Troy, other than Clark County?
We do Cottington, Clark, Dual, Day, Grant, and Hamlin counties. And currently we are, we have contracts in place with Grant, and this will be Hamlin.
Okay, so
And we're working on Clark at this time.
So you're doing the non-emergency for all the rest of them. You're just seeking a contract with the rest of them at this time. So-
Right.
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, the motion is to authorize the contract. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Item J is an approval of purchase agreement for the sale of Lot 2B and Block 1 of the Pheasant Ridge Development to the Watertown Development Company. For more information, we'll go to our city attorney, Matt Roby.
Thank you, Mayor. So this transaction is the culmination of probably over a year of back and forth discussions. So the Stone family, and represented by Mr. Jim Owen, who is in the audience this evening, approached the city interested in purchasing this parcel that sits just north of the Stone's truck stop, adjacent to the interstate. They'd like to use it to expand their parking options, provide more space for the overnight stays and the truckers and that sort of thing. And so those discussions were commenced quite some time ago. Because this property functions as a regional serves a regional drainage function, it got bogged down a little bit. We had to go through some external consultants to check off a few different options for whether or not we could move the regional detention, et cetera, et cetera. So long story short, where we landed was considering the transaction with a BMP maintenance agreement that the new owners would execute, that basically says that they're obligated to maintain the current drainage function, and that any improvements, changes to that property needs to always go through the city staff, city engineering staff, to make sure the drainage function is maintained with whatever sort of configuration they pursue out there. So what you have in front of you then is the purchase agreement that will actually convey the property to the Watertown Development Company, who will then convey the property to BRS Farms, which is the entity Stone's control, and the purchase price is $200,000. And this has been approved by the Watertown Development Company Board as meeting an economic development objective. It's allowing for a business expansion in Watertown. So with that, open it up for any questions.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to make a motion to approve the agreement. Made by Councilman Danforth, seconded by Councilman Villauer. Open it up for questions from the council. Councilman Villauer.
How was the 200,000 arrived at?
They made an offer, and we discussed it with the WDC, who kind of gave some indication what some other the lots out there have sold for historically, and it was determined to be a fair price.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Comments? Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my question is directed towards Heath. As long as engineering doesn't see any issues with this, I guess, being an engineer as well, getting rid of a detention pond of the ownership I do have concerns over that, but obviously I'm gonna put it into staff's recommendation as long as you feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, yes, Councilman Paulson, thanks for that comment. I do have a map pulled up on my screen, if that could be shared. Maddie, thank you very much. And I could talk through some of the technicalities here briefly, just so the council has some level of assurance, the amount of review that's gone into this from a operational standpoint, functioning as a detention pond. So you can see, Stones Pond identified in this drawing. This red line is an outline of this sub-basin that has had a couple of studies done on it now over the years. Back in 2007, a drainage master plan was compiled for this whole area. And you can see these green areas are proposed detention ponds throughout this basin as this area develops. That report was performed by Alteg Engineering. We've since then, just recently in the last year, had Alteg assess the functionality of this area, given the amount of the development that's occurred. I'll zoom in this specific area. And this is the pond in question, the property in question that we'd be selling to Stones. And what we wanted to ensure through Alteg's review and research is that, A, that this whole entire pond is still needed, and B, that it functions adequately to serve the remaining areas to develop within the Pheasant Ridge Industrial Park. We've had a few things happen since that 2007 plan. This pond was built. There's an area here still reserved for pond function, but another area that was slated for a pond has been allowed to be built on. So that was one of the things Alteg checked off, just to make sure that this area would still function as needed. We've also required several of these sites, as they've developed, to install their own on-site detention, which of course minimizes, or in a lot of cases removes, the need for these regional neighborhood type ponds. And because of the number of those that have been installed through here, Alteg confirmed that yes, everything in here would function appropriately, so long as we had Stones held to the level of accountability to maintain the same amount of volume in that pond today, or in the future as it exists today. Some of the improvements that Matt talked about, they will be doing some regrading in here so that it can be used for future truck parking. At least that's our expectation as far as their intended use of this area. That amount of grading, we would check that off through the engineering reviews to make sure that that amount of volume still has an appropriate amount of capacity to function. So those are some of the technicalities. I know Justin, our assistant city engineer, has worked on this in detail over the last several months and helped Matt finalize the review of these documents. And so, yes, long answer to your question, Councilman Paulson, engineering staff is comfortable with proceeding with this. I think that the BMP maintenance agreement that we hold the buyer accountable to is key to this. Without that, we would not be comfortable proceeding. But with that BMP maintenance agreement, we're comfortable with that.
Thank you very much. Councilman Schutte.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Public Works, Vaughn, I appreciate you doing that because I had questions, concerns about it, and so showing it this way and communicating it, I appreciate it.
Any further questions or comments? Chair will just say I know that the owners have been trying on this for a while. Glad that we finally got an agreement that the city and the future owners will be comfortable with, and that will help the city of Watertown. Glad that this is finally happening. With that, the motion is to approve the agreement. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item K is an approval of a professional services agreement for the relocation of TSA checkpoint equipment associated with Watertown Regional Airport Terminal Project with the Vertex Company, and authorizing the city manager to sign all documents. We'll go to our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is an agreement, and it's related to the new airport terminal construction. With that project, we need to relocate TSA's equipment from the old terminal to the new one. And so we've scheduled, pending the approval of this agreement, we've scheduled a window in time here towards the end of July that we can get that equipment moved. And of course, it has to be systematic and in sync with throwing the switch on for the operations of the new terminal. One of the requirements, though, with moving this this equipment is it's not quite as easy as just having the airport staff back the truck up to the old terminal and moving it on our own. This actually has to be done by a certified handler, certified mover of that type of equipment that meets the TSA certifications to do that kind of work. So there's only a handful of those kinds of companies throughout the country. We did seek proposals from 4 of them, and the one being brought forward for you tonight for consideration is the Vertex company. They have the lowest cost proposal of $65,500. The other costs ranged up into the mid-70s. Looks like all within a few $100 of each other at $76,000. So we opted for the less expensive company to perform this work. This will be paid for out of the 212 fund for the airport terminal project and absorbed into the overall cost for the new terminal.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the Vertex contract for a TSA checkpoint move to the new terminal. Made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Paulson. Open it up for questions and comments from the council. Councilman Villauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Only comment is that this also comes before us subsequent to approval by the airport board today.
Thank you. Councilman Tupper?
Is this going to shut down the airport for a couple hours or a day or?
Great, that's a great question, Councilman Tupper. So what we would do is schedule this to occur and work with the vendor to have this accomplished in a window that does not require the shutdown of any flights or anything like that.
So it's not like a 2-3 day project. It's a
correct.
So they'll do it probably an overnight deal and.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's good money if you can get it, right, Councilman Bueller? Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the Vertex contract for a TSA checkpoint move to the new terminal. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. That brings us to an end of tonight's agenda. We'll open it up for any old business. Councilman Danforth.
Well, I'm assuming it's old business because it would certainly relate to discussions we've had and something that we budgeted for it. I would present this, I said, to Heath, if that's okay, Mayor.
Yes, please.
I see that, you know, we have budgeted for the replacement of 12th Avenue Northeast, and I see that they've removed all the asphalt and are doing a fair amount of work up there. If you drive through that whole northeast part of town, east side, west side of 19th, these roads all look the same. They're in very, very tough shape for their age, in my opinion. Heath, what are we, as we're tearing this out and looking at it, are we finding anything that wasn't done properly back when the road was put in, and what are we going to do different so that these roads meet some better standard of expectation in regards to their overall life? You know, we're not talking about just resurfacing the top. We're gutting the thing out and doing a rebuild. And I think there's going to be a lot of roads up there that are in that situation here in the not too distant future. So are we finding anything out, and what are we going to do different with this rebuild that we're doing now to hopefully prevent this from going bad, and maybe we can apply elsewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. Great considerations, Councilman Danforth, that we've been looking at every time we do a full reconstruct like that. Are we finding anything? Yes. I mean, there are several roads that don't meet the current engineering design standards that we have adopted today. Some of those nonconformities that we would cite and that we go back and improve when we tear a road out would include the amount of base course that's underneath the asphalt. A lot of times we're finding there's minimal, minimal amount of base course. The other thing that we do to improve these roads when we tear them out completely is put in what's called edge drain. It's essentially drain tile at the front of the curb. And the combination of an increased thickness of base course and that edge drain out at the edge of that base course is that water then dissipates to the edge of the road and is conveyed out in a way to a point where it outfalls into a creek or a storm sewer and is carried away from the road bed. That's essentially why a lot of those roads in that area of town fail prematurely. Without the appropriate measures in the cross section of the street, there's simply no way to mitigate the moisture. And they teach us in, I think it was grad school I learned this actually, the three biggest enemies, the three biggest things you design a road for are drainage, drainage, and drainage. And so that's, anyway, in retrospect, what we're going back and trying to help accomplish. That area, of course, is high groundwater. That water presence underneath that asphalt without the base and the edge drain just creates the circumstances that we see now today.
Councilman Tupper?
So did you say some of that was kind of not enough base? So to my point earlier tonight, those are the kind of things that we're addressing with our standards now and watching more closely than we did in the past. So
Absolutely, yes.
yeah. Those things, I mean, they're very important that we, that we're checking that stuff and because it always comes back to bite guess who? All the taxpayers. So thank you.
Any further old business? Any new business? Any liaison member reports? Councilman Villauer.
Oh, I always should speak up here. Airport board meeting today. Employments very, very strong for the month of May again. We are just blowing the top off of where we were last year. Now, granted, maybe a little bit of a catch up yet from COVID, but last year was a strong year, and we're just blowing the top off that. I think there was an informal goal of probably about 22,000 employments set for 2022, and we're gonna, should blow right by that without any reservations whatsoever if we continue the rate we're going. The terminal building, getting very close. I think the building itself, very close to being done. I think the outside work still a little bit of time looking at Councilman Paulson down there, but still looking for a late July completion date on the project and start utilizing it. So pretty exciting. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to our Public Works Director with an announcement as well.
Yes, thank you, Councilman Villauer, Mayor. Also announced at today's airport board meeting was the hiring of our new airport manager. We've sent out a public service announcement related to that hiring earlier this afternoon. And the individual selected for that position, his name is Robert Cyrus. He resides here in Watertown. He's been here since 2020. He currently works for the South Dakota Army National Guard. He's a retired Air Force Senior Master Sergeant. He's got 24 years of service in the Air Force, and he relocated and moved to Watertown, South Dakota for his retirement to make this his home. Throughout the Air Force, he's held positions such as Aviation Supervisor, Aviation Manager, and most recently the Senior Aviation and Program Manager at Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii. In that capacity, he managed up to 900 personnel in support of 9 flight lines, and those 9 flight lines comprise of more than 300 airplanes. Rob's background, his education includes a bachelor's in human resource management, a master's in business administration, and prior to that, he got his associates in aviation and aerospace science. He also holds a certificate in as a professional manager. With all that, we really felt the interview panel. First of all, I should state that we were very fortunate to have a very high volume of well-qualified candidates, and it came down to a tough decision on some very good, very qualified candidates from across the country. We had applicants that made the final 5 interviewees that came from the East Coast, and one came from the West Coast. We had one from the D.C. area that works for Dallas Airport that was here in person for an interview, and then also one that works in the L.A. area as an airport operations manager there. So anyway, just to explain the spectrum and the scope of applicants that we received for this position. Then we also had a handful, a couple from right here in Watertown, and then a few from right within the region, from out west part of the state and up north from our neighboring state to the north. But through all that process, Robert did rise to the top, given his level of management experience, and the selection committee was very confident that he'd be able to pick up the reins as the airport manager and serve Watertown well for the years to come.
Thank you very much. Any further announcements?
I got one.
Councilman Tupper.
We are doing great with the fundraising for the fireworks, but we can always use some more help. So if anybody's out there looking at donating a little bit to our fireworks show, we're looking forward to doing it on the 4th of July at Anza Soccer Field. There's also going to be a public allowed to do their fireworks on the 2nd, and people from Loose Fireworks will be there to help. If anybody wants to reach out to me and help out with the fireworks, but we're looking forward to having the largest professionally displayed fireworks display in South Dakota again. So, and it looks like it's going to be that. So, look forward to seeing everybody on the 4th.
Thank you very much. Any further announcements from the council? Just an announcement for the public. Our next meeting will be 2 weeks from tomorrow because of the Juneteenth holiday. There's no need to go into executive session. With that, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Any comments on that? No. Hearing none. Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.